Lashon HaKodesh Kadam.
It sounds ancient, doesn't it?
It really does. What does it mean?
It translates to the language of dedication from the beginning. And that title, it really just encapsulates Horvath's entire mission.
Oh.
Because for Horvath, this wasn't just some academic exercise. It was about renewing the mind to actually hear the creator's voice.
And just a quick disclaimer before we really jump in here. We are exploring Horvath's specific worldview. We are acting as guides to his perspective.
Yeah, that's important.
Whether you agree with his theology or not, the logic he builds, starting with language and ending with lifestyle, is incredibly consistent. So let's start with the history. Horvath brings up an analogy that I found really striking. He talks about Alexander the Great.
Right, Alexander. And usually when we talk about Alexander the Great, we're talking about, phalanxes, cavalry charges, military strategy.
Yeah, conquering the known world by the age of 30.
Exactly, all the military stuff. But Horvath says Alexander's true conquest wasn't physical. It wasn't about land.
So what was it about?
No. Horvath argues that Alexander conquered the world by changing the language. See,
Right.
Alexander realized something very, very early on. You can't put a garrison in every single village from Macedonia all the way to India. You don't have enough troops.
It's impossible.
But if you can change the culture, you don't need troops.
He Hellenized them.
He Hellenized them. Exactly. He introduced Koine Greek. He made it the language of trade, the language of the intellect, the language of status. If you wanted to get ahead in the world, you had to learn Greek.
Okay, that makes sense from a practical standpoint.
But Horvath's point is that when you learn a language, you absorb the culture that's embedded in that language. It's not just words. It's a worldview.
It's like a software update for an entire civilization.
That's it. That's a perfect way to put it. If you change a people's language, you change their mindset. You change how they process information.
So Greek culture was what?
It was obsessed with philosophy, abstraction, categorization, form, whereas Semitic culture, the culture of the Hebrews, was agricultural, it was concrete, and it was functional. It was about how things work, not just what they are in the abstract.
So Horvath is arguing that this Hellenization was actually a spiritual strategy.
He calls it a strategy of the adversary. That's his term for it. He believes that by pushing the Father's word, as he calls it, through the filter of the Greek language, it was augmented and diminished.
So twisted.
Twisted. He argues that we have misconstrued the things the Father is actually saying because we are reading these very Eastern concepts through a Western Greek lens.
It's like trying to understand a farmer's manual by reading it through a book on quantum physics.
Yes.
You might get the general vibe, but you're going to completely miss the instructions on how to actually plant the corn.
That is a perfect analogy. And this brings us to the absolute core linguistic difference he builds everything on. Concrete versus abstract. This is the foundation of everything Horvath teaches.
Okay, let's get into it. He talks about the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. And he points out something I think a lot of people, myself included, don't realize. The original letters weren't just sounds.
No.
They were pictures.
This is the aha moment for a lot of people who read his work. In English, right, the letter A is just a sound. It's a foam. It doesn't mean anything by itself. It's totally abstract.
Right, A is just A.
But in the ancient Eastern mindset, specifically Paleo-Hebrew, the letters were pictographs. They were literal drawings of things from everyday life.
He lists them out in the source material. He says it's all about like the sun, water, blood, seeds.
Thorns, a house, a family.
Very tangible things.
Incredibly tangible. It's all agricultural. Horvath argues that you don't need to be a linguist or a theologian with a PhD to understand the Creator's intent. You need to understand these simple pictures. The language is built on what you can see, hear, touch, and smell.
Let's break down the first letter just to show how this actually works. The letter Aleph.
Okay, so Aleph is the first letter. In the original pictographic script, it's drawn as the head of an ox.
An ox. Okay, so why an ox?
Well, think about what an ox meant to a nomad 3,000 years ago. It was the strongest thing you owned.
Right. It pulled the plow.
It pulled the plow, it carried the burden as the leader of the herd. So the picture of the ox comes to represent strength, leadership first, or even the father.
So anytime you see an Aleph at the beginning of a Hebrew word, it's carrying that DNA of strength or fatherhood with it.
Exactly. It's not just a sound. It's a concept embedded in the word itself. And this method of reading, it changes absolutely everything.
He gives a specific case study that really illustrates the power of this. He breaks down the word for love or friend. The word is Ahab.
Yeah, this one is a great example.
I love this one because in English, friend is so It's so vague. I can say Abraham was a friend of God, and it sounds like they were just buddies.
Right, like they hung out.
Yeah, maybe they watched the game together. It implies a kind of casual, equal relationship.
Friend in the West is democratic. We're on the same level. But Horvath breaks down Ahab, which is spelled A-H-B, or Aleph Hebate, using the pictures. And suddenly, that democracy just evaporates.
Okay, so let's walk through the letters.
All right, so Ahab starts with Aleph. We just talked about that one, the ox.
The father, the strong leader, got it.
The second letter is Bait. In the pictograph, Bait looks like the floor plan of a tent. You can almost see the little rooms. It represents the house, the family, or the inside.
Okay, so we have the father and the house.
And in the center of the word is the letter He. And this is interesting. This letter is a picture of a person with their arms raised up high.
Like in worship.
Exactly. It signifies behold, or breath, revelation, or spiritual awe. That feeling of seeing something bigger than yourself.
So you have strength, father.
Yeah.
Then all worship. Then the house. What does that even mean when you put it together?
When you put it all together, Horvath says the word Ahab isn't just an emotion like I like you. It literally pictures the father, Aleph, becoming the head of the house, Bait, because of the worship and awe that is in the center of the relationship.
Whoa, that's profound. It completely shifts the entire dynamic.
It changes the whole context of Abraham being the friend of God.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they were pals. It means Abraham had a revelation, a moment of awe, where he understood who the Creator was, and because of that awe, he willingly submitted his entire household structure to the headship of the Creator.
As he puts it in the book, it brings to mind the idea of pitching your tent with Elohim.
Which is a very Eastern, very nomadic, very concrete image. You can picture it. And that is what he means when he says words create worlds. If you just read friend, you get a Western concept of a casual relationship. If you understand Ahab, you get a concept of structural submission and divine headship.
And once Horvath saw this, once he realized that the English words were basically hiding these pictures, he couldn't go back?
No, you can't unsee it.
He basically refuses to use standard English religious terms. He calls them pagan or wicked.
He really sees them as masks. He believes these English terms have been overlaid on the text to hide the true character of the entity being described. So throughout his books, he performs what you could call a glossary swap.
Let's run through a few of these, because if you, the listener, pick up his book, Lashon HaKodesh Kadam, you might be a little confused at first. He doesn't say God.
No, he uses Elohim. And the reason is God is a generic Germanic term that can apply to anything from Odin to, a coffee mug if you love it enough.
Right, it's generic.
Elohim is a Hebrew plural title that implies mighty ones or supreme authority. It's specific.
And instead of Jesus, he uses
Yeshua. And we'll get to why the name matters so much in a moment. But the short version is he wants to link the Son back to the Father's name.
Okay. Instead of spirit, he uses
Ruach.
I like Ruach. It sounds like what it is. It has a breathy quality.
It does. And that's because it literally means wind or breath. In English, spirit sounds ghostly. It's ethereal, invisible. But Ruach, that's the wind hitting your face during a storm. That's the air filling your lungs. It makes the concept of the spirit physical and dynamic, not some floaty ghost.
And a big one for his theology. Instead of church, he uses
Called out ones. This is huge for him. The church, which comes from the old word kirk or circe, is a building. It's a destination. You go to church.
But called out ones.
That's the literal translation of the Greek ecclesia. It's a status. It means you have been separated from the world.
You can't go to a called out ones. You are the called out ones.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from an institution you attend to an identity you possess.
And finally, instead of angel, he uses messenger.
Yeah, and that one is such an interesting correction. Angel is just a transliteration of the Greek word angelos, which just means messenger.
So it's the same word?
It is, but over the last 1,000 years, angel has taken on so much baggage. We think of wings, halos, chubby babies on Valentine's cards, or maybe, a glowing woman touching you by the side of a highway.
It's become a cartoon, a cultural construct.
Horvath wants to strip all that cultural baggage away. In the scripture, these beings were often mistaken for normal men, or they were terrifying warriors. Their function was to deliver a message from the king. By calling them messengers, he makes them functional agents of the administration, not magical fairies.
But the biggest one, and the one he dedicates the most ink to by far, is the name of the Creator. He is adamant that we should not use the word Lord.
This is a major, major point of contention for him. He points out that Baal, the name of the ancient Canaanite fertility god that's often condemned in the Bible.
Right, the enemy of Elijah.
That's the one. He points out that the word Baal literally translates to Lord or Master or Husband.
So wait, let's unpack that. He's not just saying Lord is a generic title. He's saying it's specifically the title of the enemy.
In the ancient Near East, yes, Baal meant Lord. So Horvath argues that when you see Lord in all caps in your English Bible, which the translators do to indicate the divine name, you are essentially calling the creator by the title of a pagan deity. You are calling Yahweh Baal.
Wow. That is a shocking thought for someone who grew up reading the King James Version. It almost feels disrespectful to even suggest it.
And Horvath would say that your feeling of disrespect is actually a conditioning. It's a result of the traditions of men. He wants to shake the reader out of that autopilot. He insists on using the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, YHWH. And then, of course, there's the name of the Son, Yahshua.
Which means?
Yahweh saves, or Yahweh is salvation. He connects the Son directly to the Father's name and his mission. He argues that Jesus is a Greek derivative, Isus, that completely severs that linguistic and familial connection. He wants the family name restored.
So we have this framework of language, but what I love about these sources is that this didn't start for Alan as some academic exercise. He didn't just decide to go to the library one day and study etymology. This started in the front seat of a '56 Chevy.
The story of the Jiddu. Yeah. This is the emotional anchor of Horvath's entire theology.
Whoa.
Without this story, the rest is just, interesting theory.
So set the scene for us.
Okay, so Alan is a young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. His grandfather, his Jiddu, was from Syria. He spoke Aramaic as his native tongue.
So he spoke the same languages.
The language that Yahshua spoke,
Yeah.
yes. And his Jiddu was a tailor by trade, but a street preacher by calling.
A tailor and a preacher. I like that combination.
And Alan recounts seeing his grandfather sitting in his car, this old '56 Chevy, reading a leather-bound Bible. But it wasn't in English. It was written in the ancient Aramaic script.
Wow.
And as he's reading, the grandfather is weeping, just tears streaming down his face. Alan sees this and is just completely confused. Why is his tough, street-preaching grandfather crying over a book?
And he thinks to himself,
He thinks, when I grow up, I'm going to read that book and find out what my Jiddu's tears were all about.
that is such a powerful motivation. It wasn't about dogma or rules. It was about emotion. He wanted to feel what his grandfather felt.
And the grandfather's influence went so deep. Horvath notes that because his grandfather spoke the language fluently, he understood the intrinsic inflections. He knew that translating it into English was incredibly difficult and often resulted in a loss of that emotional depth. So that seed was planted really early. English is insufficient. English is dry. Aramaic is wet with tears.
But there was another seed planted even earlier than that. And this one is wild. We are talking about the fields of Revelation.
This is the supernatural encounter he claims to have had around age 4 or 5. He describes lying in fields of tall grass, looking up at the clouds, just being a kid, but he realized he was having a conversation.
A conversation with who?
With a messenger, an angel, looking down at him from a cloud. He describes it as a face that literally formed in the clouds and was communicating directly with him, mind to mind.
And the twist here, the really strange part, is that he wasn't allowed to remember the conversation.
Right. It's a trope we sometimes see in sci-fi, but here it's presented as a form of spiritual protection. The messenger tells him, this is the last session. You're becoming conscious.
Oh.
Meaning he's growing up, gaining self-awareness and ego, and the parting words were, so long, Alan. I will see you on the other side.
See you on the other side. I mean, that would give you a lifelong sense of confidence, wouldn't it?
For sure.
But I'm really interested in his interpretation of the memory wipe. Why would a messenger give you instructions and then make you forget them? That seems counterintuitive.
Horvath's analysis of it is fascinating. He believes the instructions were written on his heart, not his mind.
Okay.
His reasoning is, if you remember them intellectually, he might try to contrive his actions. He might try to act out the script he was given.
He'd be performing. It wouldn't be authentic.
Exactly. By forgetting the details, his actions throughout his life would have to be genuine. They would flow from his character, his heart, rather than from some mental checklist. He describes it as having a guiding force that steered him at every junction, even when he didn't consciously know why he was making certain decisions.
And he had to make a lot of decisions because as he got older, he became a bit of a spiritual detective. He started testing the world's religions, and he was not impressed.
He was a very critical observer from a very young age.